Hello everyone, this is Crota giving you a shoutcast in a game between Fnatic MSI's TT1 versus EG Idra here in the Xel'Naga Caverns. This is game 1 in a series. We have TT1 spawning as the green Protoss player. Meanwhile, we have Idra spawning as the blue Zerg. Zerg versus Protoss. Everyone's favorite Zerg to hate is playing against TT1. I have heard a couple interviews from TT1 recently, and TT1 feels like he isn't really on top of his game, so we'll see how he does against a very, very macro-intensive Zerg, Idra. Idra does have two styles of play. Idra either goes for a very strong macro portion of the game, trying to rely on brute force to try to take over his opponent, or he does a timing push where he macros up for an X amount of time and then completely switches gears and then goes into a timing push, sacrificing all drone production and trying to push his way through. We'll see if this works this time around, as now TT1 making his way out with this one probe. Harvester count, we are going to see 12 drones to 11 probes, but that's quickly going to catch up. As you can see, 2 drones are being trained up. One of the benefits of the Zerg player is that they're able to just build multiple drones at the same time, a little bit faster than a Nexus, unless you account for chrono boosting. Anyways, we are getting that gateway here. Most likely we'll get a cybernetics core here, followed by a zealot there, and that's going to pretty much be what we see. We are getting a spawning pool first, so it is a spawning pool first, and the probe still hasn't taken a look back. Now taking a look, finally sees the extractor, gonna look around even further, get some damage onto a drone, as that drone decides to back off, change its location there. So really, really nicely done by TT1 so far, just trying to put down some harass, allowing the shields to naturally regenerate on that probe. That probe will now be returning home and be able to just do a little bit more scouting still, as there are no really signs of any Zerglings. Idra going for a spawning pool first. This is a little bit of an interesting strategy. We'll see how it works out. We may be seeing a Roach Warren right after this, and what needs to happen is that Queen needs to be trained up, perhaps 1 or 2 Zerglings to try to put some pressure onto that one probe, so the probe will be forced to return home, and we are going to most likely be getting a zealot into play as well. We are now warping in a second assimilator for a lot of sentries. The probe still coming in, getting a little bit of damage, but really hasn't done all too much so far, as now it looks like Idra going to be setting up a low ground hatchery. He may now be forced to try to reposition that. Oh, TT1 moving away for just a moment. He did not see the hatchery being placed down here, and that was a critical mistake. TT1 needed to know if a hatchery was going to be placed down or if it was in fact going to be roaches, as now the probe just wandering around the field, looking to see perhaps if you can place on a proxy pylon. We are going to get warp gate research now coming in. The Zerglings now splitting up, the probe trying to run away, and it looks like the probe will be able to back off. A second Zergling will be able to get off another hit there. 2 hits, in fact, as that probe just trying to sneak by. It looks like the probe should be able to recharge 2 shields before another claw attack does come in fact. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Though, actually recharge the full 5 shields, as a third Zergling now coming in. And oh, a nice juke there, as that probe just dancing around back and forth. We are going to get TT1. It looks like he's going to be going off of 3-gate play, trying to train up as many sentries as possible. The sentries only take 37 seconds to build off of the gateway, so it makes a lot of sense to try to build those up until you can finally get some additional units. Idra was able to come in and see 2 additional gateways being warped in here. The probe now trying to run away. It looks like it does have a decent amount of shields. Should be able to mineral path through the zealot and the sentry, but are the Zerglings actually been able to come by there? One zealot able to get off some damage. Those Zerglings now being forced to pull back, as this probe now warping in a low ground pylon. We are getting that Roach Warren that I mentioned a little bit earlier. 24 drones versus 27 probes, so a slight economic advantage by TT1, but Idra should be able to out macro his opponent if he does decide to go for even more drones, or he should be able to get a lot of roaches as well. We'll see what his strategy will be as that Roach Warren about to be completed. I do not see any creep tumors though, so that is a bit of a surprise. Not getting the movement speed, as Idra just keeping on top of those spawn larvas, just trying to make sure that he doesn't fall behind in terms of production. Now going into 5 roaches. We may get even more roaches in just a moment, but he is currently behind in gas, only mining off of 1 extractor so far, so he's not going to really be able to get that many roaches. Now going to go for Roach Ling at this stage. A lot of sentries are in position, 6 sentries, a lot of them with a decent amount of energy, and will TT1 with those force fields be able to fend off this pressure is going to be the key question. A lot of Zerglings coming in as well. So the Zerglings now making their way over. No, the Roaches now is quickly coming over here to make sure to try to take down these destructible rocks instead. The rocks should fall down rather quickly, as we should be getting a hatchery up in just a moment. Sentries now, 8 of them in production. We are going to go into a 4-gate play. Perhaps a lot of Stalkers to make their way out, or even more Zealots. Mass Sentry Zealot army-wise, a very, very large gas-intensive army. 800 gas, 600 minerals against the sheer amount of Roaches now coming in from Idra. The rocks not yet destroyed, about halfway done, as the Roaches have reached almost critical mass. That is a lot of Roaches to be dealing with at this stage. 8 Roaches, a lot of Zergling. Those Roaches gonna perhaps go after some of those other units there. The Roaches are gonna be able to perhaps take down some of those pylons, but Idra has to be very careful. He cannot outrange all of those sentries, and now deciding to back off. Zerglings now coming in along the bottom side there. Another force field, but not in time, not to be able to prevent all those Zerglings from finding those sentries, and the sentries are falling rather quickly. The Roaches having their way against a couple of those Stalkers as well. And Idra completely switching gears from macroing drones and a long-term gameplay into just creating mass number of Zerglings and Roaches. And the Roaches look like they will be able to finish the job here. Probe's now trying to walk back up the ramp, but I believe the worker kills, 8 worker kills, army-wise, 100 minerals versus 1,025 minerals and 125 gas. And there's the GG by TT1. So Idra taking game 1 in this series here on the Xel'Naga Caverns. Stay tuned for game 2.